welcome to my podcast, Stories by Vera V. Today I'm joined by a very special guest by the name of
Joseph Schmidt.
And we'll be discussing what's it like writing a book whilst writing a PhD. Interesting stories by interesting people. Stories by Vera V. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Joseph Schmidt. Most people call me Joey, so I guess go by Joey. I am currently in my second year of PhD in physics here at UT Austin. And I do a lot of things on the side. So I'm currently writing a book. So it's kind of like self-publishing and yeah, so that's fun. But it's always been a dream of mine to publish something, a book or something. So yeah, besides that, I do a lot of woodworking, 3D printing. I was in a dance team, so I'm all over the place.
You're so casual with it. Oh, just on the side, publishing a book, whatever.
I don't know. I guess I've gotten used to it. I have to get used to it now. Just say I'm an author. It's weird.
Yeah.
But
because it's supposed to be, because I saw your story highlight and it said that originally it was going to be published in December, right? And now it's going to be in May. So what was if you don't mind me asking, what was the delay?
So I'm part of a program. It's the Creative Writers Institute. I think that's what it's called. But so they have a set schedule. It's insane. Within a year, you're supposed to have the full book and everything done. But essentially, they give you 6 months to plan your book and write all your words. So the first month or so is planning, writing down, getting your characters, kind of having a good kind of goal to shoot for. And then the next 4 or 5 months or so, it's you actually writing your first draft of your book. Mm-hmm. And then you do like marketing. So you tell people like, hey, like, this is my book. Like, I'm really excited about it. And then you pitch it to people and you fundraise for it because it's self-published. So you're trying to raise your own funds if you can. And after that, it's kind of the refinement, proofreading, actually getting out there, marketing and stuff like that. That's the latter half. And because I'm doing a PhD at the same time, it was just too much for me to do. And like I spoke with my editor too, and he said, you have what you wrote is good, but I feel like you could do a lot more. And like I thought about it, and he was right. So they allowed me. They're really generous. They allow you to extend it because I mean they recognize people have different circumstances and things like that. So I extended it not once but twice, and so it took me like 11 months to write the first draft of the book. But it was I think 52,000 words, which is about the size of a usual novel. So yeah, that took my time. So yeah.
But also for the program, so you go into it wanting to write a book, right? Without any sort of solid idea? Or how does that work? Like, what does the program do, Does it provide just guidance or?
It's so, when you start the program, I mean, you have an inkling, you want to write a book and maybe some idea. And then you pitch it. You're on a call with the kind of the creator of the program. And then you pitch them your idea and say, I want to go in this category and this is kind of what I'm thinking. And then if they believe that what you have is good enough and you kind of like, you sound inspired by it, they say like, okay, cool. Like they green light you and then you pay, honestly, for me, it was, I forgot what, like $300 for the full program, which is they have people on calls, tell you how to write books, how to write like the structure of the books, writing tips. They have like a writing group there. They have like you get your own editing team, like giving you ideas. You have like a marketing team. It's honestly like the value of it was, I'm stupefied even today. Like the amount of stuff they can do, like that they do for you and to help you. It's really amazing. And like I've met a couple of authors there too, and we're like, I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to buy your book. It's just a really fun place right now.
Mm-hmm. So is it all digital?
Yeah, right now it's online. I don't know previously how, I guess there was originally it started I think like, I don't know how long ago, but I think originally it was in a class. And so he taught it to students, and he's like, within a semester, you write a book, and then within a year, you kind of finish it and publish it and stuff like that. So
within a semester, you write a book.
Yeah, I mean, it's within 6 months or so.
Yeah, but 52,000 words. You know?
Well, no, I would no. That takes a little longer.
Yeah. So, what made you want to write yours? When did you first have that idea that you wanted to write a book?
It was the beginning of the pandemic. It was right. Yeah, when the pandemic started, I was picking up a lot of different hobbies and stuff, and so originally I started doing app programming with my brother. He's like, "Hey, let's do this app programming thing," and I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." We did that for a bit, and I was like, I don't know, like casually watching like Netflix and shows and stuff. And I was watching at that time, I think I was watching The Boys, maybe. It's on Amazon. It's like a gritty superhero, like what would happen if superheroes happened in real life, like with corporations kind of selling them essentially. And so I was watching that. And then I think I got an article about, it was genetic engineering, like the first genetically modified embryo was in China in 2015. And I saw that and I was like, what? So I started getting a bunch of like articles about genetic engineering. And so I just went down a rabbit hole of reading different like technologies and techniques and things like that. And then I started watching like documentaries about it. And that like, it was amazing and terrifying to see what like genetic engineering could do, what it was capable of. And like it could solve so many problems, but you had to be really, really careful about how you use it. And so that started to make me think like, okay, cool. In the near future, we're probably going to be doing stuff like that. And so I was just thinking like, what happens if you could give people like superpower subscriptions? Like every month, you just genetically modify someone, and then they get like super strength or like enhanced intellect or reflexes or things like that. And so I was like, oh, that would actually be pretty cool. And then so I started like writing down a bunch of ideas and notes and stuff like that. And then I had a really long document like with a list of a bunch of different like ideas I had for it. Now I started speaking with a couple of friends, and they're like, oh, that seems like a really good like comic book or like a book. And they're like, you're right. And so I like tucked that away in the back of my mind. And then so that was kind of the inkling of the idea. And then originally I was also working on a poetry book. So I was writing a lot of poetry when I was going out for walks. I had, I don't know, 70 poems or so. And I was like trying to make it into a book. And I was like, I want to publish a poetry book. Like that's always been kind of a dream of mine. And then this program came up and I was like, oh, this is perfect. They'll train me, they'll teach me how to do it. And then I was thinking like, I want to know how to market my book. I want to know kind of the ins and outs of the industry. And then so I pitched them the idea. I was like, hey, superheroes, genetic engineering, are you buying it? Are you with it? And they're like, yes, we'll do it. And I was like, okay. And now here we are.
So with the poetry book, are you going to do a second one, or is it kind of combined into this one?
So the poetry book, I postponed that because I felt more confident that I could do kind of the superhero stuff first, and it would help me kind of run a test trial of kind of understanding the process of making a book, marketing it, especially marketing it. My brother's told me he does some marketing stuff here and there with like Amazon books that he writes. So he always gives me tips and tricks, and I'm like, I want to learn how to do it as well. And so kind of the book writing program was a way to learn the industry a little better. And then I'll throw in a poetry book somewhere. Okay. But yeah, I have plans for one poetry book and another one coming up later, but yeah, there's so many things on the back burner right now.
3 books in the works. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of work.
My notes are very hectic and scattered.
But I think it's good to have things going, because I think one thing truly does feed another. It inspires something else, and it just all ends up working out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to tell people all the stuff I failed at and all the stuff I gave up on, it rolled into what I'm doing now. So like a lot of stuff I did before, like website, I tried to do online marketing, selling like t-shirts and stuff like that. And that taught me how to build websites on WordPress. And now I use that to market my book. And I was like, all the stuff I did there and I thought were failures, like I can use them now and learn from them. So that's really nice.
Everything just comes together. But with writing, did you start writing when you were young? Like, was that ever something that you were really into?
Not writing like stories per se. I more got into poetry. In high school, I had awesome English teachers. They, the whole every word means something. Like nothing is not intentional. And so I got like a lot of learning about that from some awesome teachers. We did like really in-depth poetry analysis. And that just made me appreciate kind of the cadence, the rhythm, kind of the emotion behind it. And I started writing my own poetry. It was probably not that good. And eventually I wrote a speech I remember high school graduation. I wrote a speech. I really like writing speeches. And so I asked the counselor at that time, like, hey, I want to give this speech at the high school, like senior kind of graduation thing. And she was like, no one's ever asked me this before. Like, okay. And I was like, okay, I'll do it then. And so
did you guys not have speeches before?
Well, normally they have traditionally you have like the salutatorian or the valedictorian give the speech, right? And so they had that going on as well.
Okay. So you just had one to add into it.
Yeah, they spaced it out so the valedictorian said it at the end because it was kind of a farewell speech. And so, they threw in my speech there, and I was happy about that. But I gave that speech, and after I gave that speech, like I have a thing of like on my whiteboard, I have cool things that I've done, and the speech actually made somebody cry who didn't speak English. And the speech was in English. So my classmate comes up to me afterward and she says, you made my grandma cry with your speech. And she doesn't speak English. And I was like, dang. And so like at that, like, it was then that I realized that like words are really powerful, and like this, like the ability to create and convey emotion to someone else is like a really powerful thing. And I just like fell in love with that ability to not manipulate emotion, but to like transfer emotion and make people understand that. And I think I just from then on I started appreciating writing and stuff a lot more, and here we are again.
Have any poems made you cry or made you really emotional?
Yeah, they're I think the one in Interstellar for sure. Don't go gently into that good night. That one is like inspirational, but also like it's like bittersweet. And then which other one? There's one by, I forgot who it was by, but it was like like a really short poem, 3 lines or 4 lines. And I think it was like baby shoes for sale. Not used, selling for $5. And it was just like,
it sounds really familiar.
That one, it was just a super short poem, but like the first time I read it, I was like, okay, whatever. And then like, then my English teacher's like, read it again. And then I just looked up and I was like, okay, what? And she's like, she just looked at me, and I was like, I looked at it again. I was like, oh, that's that really hit me.
Mm-hmm. And also, because you mentioned analyzing works thoroughly in English class. So when you were writing your book, did you really put everything in there intentionally? Does that make sense?
So I mean, probably not like, not to the level of intentionality of like, oh, this word is 5 letters and the next one is 4. 4 plus 5 is 9, and not like that level of
cryptic messages.
Yeah, no, not that much, but definitely. So it's fun because I plan to make this a trilogy. So this is the first book. I roughly have what the next books are going to be. So I'm inserting like little things here and there throughout the first book, like very intentionally. And the first book by itself too, there's a really twist ending at the end. So I have to intentionally put things at the beginning that make it seem natural. That's the hard part, because you want this story to seem like it could naturally happen. And I don't want I mean, you've seen probably movies where like the ending just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Or it just like, it abruptly switches and you're just like, that character is, why are they doing that? Their motives don't really match what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so that's always tricky to get right. But I'm trying to be as intentional as I can.
So you're thinking from beginning to ending how to make it flow as smoothly as possible?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the tricky part. I realized when I built the timeline of events, I had a first scene and a last scene. And it was like very, very different places for the character, the protagonist. And so I had to juggle a lot of things. I had to think about how to make them get there in a kind of step-by-step way that wasn't boring. So you have to kind of the traditional wind up, and then you get to the climax, and then you drop down to your traditional story like that. But then you also have your kind of side characters, and they also have to go through some obstacles and things like that. So you have to weave in their story as well. And then there's kind of how the setting plays with the characters, and you have to make that cohesive and make it match with the character's response. So dialogue and slang and kind of family traditional values and things like that have to make sense with the characters and the setting. And so, yeah, it's a lot to keep track of.
So just basically you're creating, because I mean, that's what it is. You're just creating a whole separate world where that book and everything exists in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever read A Clockwork Orange? I mean, I'm sure have you?
I don't think so. No, I haven't.
Because I feel like that book is just the prime example of it being a whole separate world. So there's even like a different language. It's English, but it's also mixed in with Russian and some other Slavic languages. But by the time you finish the book, you actually understand it, and you really feel like you're completely immersed in the story. So I think that's really interesting.
It's definitely hard to do, especially if there's like different. I have kind of a similar thing, not multiple languages mixing, but I'm doing English Spanish. So it's set in a border town. So there's Spanglish. So there's English mixed in with Spanish there. So that's always fun too.
Is Spanish your first language?
No, it's my third. Yeah.
What's your first?
English.
And then?
First was English. Second was Indonesian.
Wow.
And then third was Spanish. Yeah. I'm kind of mad because my mom's from Mexico, and she didn't teach us, me and my brothers. I have 2 older brothers. She didn't teach us Spanish, even though she knew Spanish. We lived in Indonesia. We lived in Papua New Guinea. We picked up Indonesian there. Completely forgot it. We moved to Mexico, and my mom didn't teach us any Spanish before this. Keep that in mind. So we moved to Mexico. We're put in a middle school, a Spanish middle school. I show up first day, know nothing of Spanish. And so I'm like, I just walk into the classroom. The teacher's like, "Hola todos, este es un nuevo estudiante." This is like a new student. And I'm just like waving. I have no idea what they're saying. She's like, she just points to a desk over there. I just walk over to the desk at the back. Everyone's looking back at me going, I have no idea what they're saying. And then, yeah. So that forced me to pick up Spanish real quick.
No, I bet. Because I mean, it was the same thing with me. I moved from Russia to the United States when I was like 9. I mean, it's still younger, but I didn't speak a word of English.
Yeah, you pick it up quick.
Yeah.
How did you pick it up through? Because I know a lot of people, most of the time when they move, they pick it up through like songs or TV or.
No, it was mostly books, because every night I would sit down and I would read this one book, The Power of Poppy Pendle. It's like a fictional kid's book about like a witch. And every single word that I didn't know, I would write it down and I would study it. So eventually it just kind of came to be.
Yeah. No, for me, I think that also helped. We would watch TV, like Spanish TV with my mom. And then so I'd ask her, like, what does that mean? Like whenever she was there, when we were watching TV. So that helped out. El Chavo del Ocho. That was the show I remember watching.
Yeah. No, but I think it's so interesting because when you're placed in that sort of environment where you don't understand a thing, I got a headache and it just seems so foreign, you know? But then you just come to familiarize yourself with it.
Yeah. No, it's funny too, like hearing other people describe it. Like when you hear a foreign language, it just sounds like random words and phrases and noises and stuff like that. But then like when you hear a language you know, and then someone beside you doesn't know that language, it's so weird, like asking them, describe what you think you're hearing to me. And they're just like, I don't know, it sounds like a bunch of S
yeah.
like random, like, because like Spanish, for example, it'll have a bunch of S sounds in it. So then they're like, oh, I just hear like S's or whatever. And it's always funny kind of thinking what it would sound like another language if you didn't know it. I don't know, it's just meta.
I watched a video once about what English sounds to non-English speakers, what it sounds like. And someone said that it sounds like vegetables being cut.
Vegetables being cut.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it because it's kind of on the softer side, but you know.
Is it hard vegetables or soft vegetables? Like,
no, they provided imagery too. It was lettuce.
Lettuce. I can't. That's so specific. I love that. Lettuce being cut.
And so with your book, when you were writing it, because I mean, it's a science fiction book, right? And there's Spanglish in it. But did you, because you like poetry so much, were you thinking also about the word choices and how that would make it sound? Do you know what I'm asking?
Oh yeah. So not in terms of so I had to learn this the hard way. And at the beginning, I wrote in a very poetic way where I was describing the scenery and like how the air was strung tight like something wire or something. I would say that, and then I would write out the whole like the how the environment felt and how the air was tense and that sort of thing. And then my editor at that time, he's like, "You write a lot about like the sound and imagery, and like stop. We need more like quick. We need more quick action and like shorter sentences. Choppy. Let's go." And so I at the beginning, I was very descriptive about imagery and details and sounds and in a very poetic way. And I had to like unlearn that. Now I'm seeing it like I'm reading. This is my reference of good books to follow. It's one of my favorite books. And I'm I'm noticing now like the patterns that are in like different styles of books. So shorter sentences, the word choice is very important, very, very tricky, because you have an image in your mind of how you want a certain action to look and feel. And like he stood up nervously, but you want to try and describe that in one word. You don't want to be verbose. You want to keep minimal words. So you try and look for that word that stand up nervously. What's a synonym for that you can use in one word? And so that's a lot of the trick sometimes. Is it's that game you play where you know the word, you're thinking of the word, but you just don't know what the word is. And so you have to like hunt down a lot of times that word. And so that's always tricky.
So you went from very flowery and descriptions, I don't know how else to call it, to more concise wording, because is that the typical, because I don't read much science fiction. So, I mean, I don't know, but is that just the typical, I guess, standard for the genre?
Yeah. So I like to use the way I described it before was artsy fartsy. And yeah, now it's not that it's not descriptive. It's that it's, you're not doing kind of relational comparison. So you won't say this thing is like this thing. In poetry, you have that a lot. Like you say the air was like blank, blank.
Similes.
You're comparing.
Similes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're comparing one thing to another and juxtaposing the characteristics or kind of building it up that way. But in sci-fi or fiction, a lot of times you have, I mean, you can have lengthy descriptions of things, but it's a lot more sensory detail. So the colors, the textures, but in a very not clinical way, but not as, I guess, flowery as poetry.
So you're just trying to squeeze as much meaning into the words as you can, as much meaning into as little words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of times you want to like remove adverbs. So if you can say he stood up nervously, if you can say that in a shorter way, you want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Because I know some books, I mean, they're classics like War and Peace. There are a lot of descriptions of nature, and it's just very, very, it's almost microscopically detailed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like those ones are, at least the way I see it, you have to, if you describe like that to that level of specificity, it has to be for a reason. Like maybe the character, maybe like you're in a certain character's mind and they see the world in that way. Like maybe they're a botanist, so they like pay hyper specific detail or attention to like a leaf, and they're describing all the ways that the leaf veins. Yeah, I don't know. And so like you can definitely like use the way a scene is described to be in the mind's eye of a certain character to exemplify certain traits and characteristics that they have.
That's very interesting. So your editor said to keep it concise, to maintain a consistent, I guess, like style of writing, right? Yeah. That's very interesting. Because right now I'm reading Fitzgerald's The Beautiful and Damned. And it's not said to be his best work, but it's up there. But obviously his masterpiece is said to be The Great Gatsby. But The Beautiful and Damned was kind of criticized because the writing it's not inconsistent, but it's not as consistent as the Great Gatsby. So I think that's interesting also.
What do they mean by not consistent? Does it change between like different chapters? Or
I'm getting this from the little prologue that they do from someone reviews the book basically, and they write like a synopsis of it, I guess. So they're saying that it's not as developed, I guess. So there isn't as much meaning in as little words as possible, if that makes sense. But I think that comes with practice, because obviously the more you write, the better at it you get.
Yeah, you definitely. I've noticed that too. Like I'm reading. I'm in the copy editing stage right now, so I'm reading my old stuff I did at the beginning, and oh my gosh, it's not. it's not bad, but it's overly descriptive. That's the way my editor would put it. So,
and that was a year ago, your first stuff?
It was 10, 11 months ago. Yeah, a year ago.
Wow.
Yeah, a year ago. Damn.
Time flies.
Yeah.
That must be so interesting seeing your progress.
It's it's funny because originally I had the 6 months, and then they asked me like, what are you planning on doing? And I said, I want to extend it. And my editor's like, you should build out more of the world based on like, cause I have the main storyline follows a protagonist, a high schooler. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you should build out a storyline to see how the police would interact with like these superpowers. Like, how would they deal with it? And so I was like, oh yeah, it's a cool idea. And so that was my extension period, was kind of a police storyline, like a side story, but I had to weave it into the main storyline. And so like, as I'm reading the chapters, I'll have like my old stories, like from a year ago, like my old writing, mixed in with the newer writing, which is like snappy and quick. And I think it's a lot better. And I mix it in. And so it's funny because I'll read one chapter and it's like the old stuff. It's like overly descriptive and technical and verbose. And then I have the new stuff, which is like very quick and action packed and it's a lot smoother. And so that's always funny to have them side by side and to read them. So that, yeah. I can definitely see the difference between the two there.
Mm. And so with that, are you gonna rewrite the old stuff to maintain a sort of consistency?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So right now, rewriting, cutting down a lot of words. I've cut down, I don't know, maybe 1,000 words already from the first two chapters. Yeah, it was a lot. It was too wordy. But I might add some stuff in there because for my editors, like, you need world building and certain details about stuff like that. So, but yeah, certainly a lot of cutting down.
So right now is the editing process.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to write it before you started really editing
it? So we have, right now it's, I think, my second week of the editing process. And I have 7 weeks. So I have until February, the end of February, to go through the whole book twice. So that's fun. And so I have to be really diligent about a chapter a day or something like that is my key target pace right now. But yeah, so I have about 2 months to do the editing, and then the actual writing process it took 11 months, but that was because I had to do school on the side. School got in the way of my writing, my true career, my true calling. But yeah, so 11 months, but I could have dedicated more time if I'd balanced school better. So,
do you have an estimation of the hours? Because I don't know. I have no idea how long it takes to write a book.
I don't know. See, I'd get into these really good grooves where I'd write like 1,000 words a day or every 2 days. And then I would just not write for a week. And so it's really inconsistent. I wouldn't be able to tell you, but one fun thing I did do is I tracked I actually have a plot of I'm a real big like numbers junkie. So I plotted in Excel like how many words I wrote. Whenever I finished a scene, I considered a scene like a block of something happening, essentially. So whenever I finished one of those, I would write in Excel the words it has, and then I'd add that. And so I have a target trend line that I'm supposed to hit where it goes like this, and then I plateau at 600,000 or 60,000. That was my goal. And it's a nice little trend line to 60,000. And my little plot is like flatlined and then a spike and then flatline, and then a spike until I get to like 52,000. So I wouldn't be able to tell you how long it took. It was very sporadic. So
a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's how the best works of art come to be, honestly.
Yeah, I did realize that too. Like, you need time away from it to think about like what's going to happen. Because I plotted out like a timeline of what I wanted to happen, but then when I started to write it, I realized I don't really know as much as I thought I knew coming in. Like, how are the characters reacting to the certain scene? Like, and it was annoying because I knew how I wanted a certain scene to begin and a certain scene to end. And then I had to have a character say a specific line. Mm-hmm. And that was always tricky because I had to weave it into the conversation. And then, they casually said this line, which is key to getting to the end of the scene. Mm-hmm. So that was always, it was always good to leave it for a bit. I didn't always complete a scene in one sitting. Sometimes I'd complete it halfway, come the next day, and then finish it off. But yeah, definitely time away from it did help to get a good picture of what I was doing.
Have you ever dreamt about it or anything that helped your book? Because I know sometimes it happens to people who are like, I don't know, artists or writers or singers.
Not dream, but I had the annoying thing that happened where right before you go to sleep, you get a really good idea. And then you're in that conundrum where you're like, should I get up or am I going to remember it tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And then so oftentimes I just wake up and I'd be sitting in bed for 30 minutes and I'd pull out my phone and be writing notes for like 10 minutes or something.
So you would remember it in the morning?
No, I wouldn't remember it in the morning.
Okay.
If I forgot it, I don't know. There might have been some of those that I forgot that I just don't know. But most of the time, if I was there lying in bed, I'd have to write it down because I feel like, I mean, how would I know if I forgot it? But I feel like it was just a good idea. So I had to write it down.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I think every idea comes for some sort of reason, right? Because everything sparks everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But with your PhD, what made you want to pursue a PhD in physics? Because that sounds like a very hefty job. You know?
So yeah, that one came in high school. I had a professor, teacher, Mr. Braden, and he was a quirky man. He liked to do a lot of things too. He'd do like electronics, like he'd be teaching class. And then we'd have free time to do homework or whatever. And then in the meantime, he'd be working on like some electronics, like circuits or whatever. And so he was a really big inspiration for me. He didn't study physics per se. He was kind of I think he was an engineer, but he just liked to do a lot of different things, interested in physics and stuff like that. So he had a lot of trinkets around his classroom. And I really wanted to do physics because of him, but the university I was close by didn't really have a good physics program. So I went into engineering, and I was really interested in space, kind of space propulsion systems. So like chemical rockets and like fusion, like all the weird quirky stuff, like warp drives and fusion drives and stuff like that. And so I did engineering. And I was working with microsatellites and kind of building that stuff and the circuitry for that. And I figured if I'm I like doing research, and I figured if I was going to keep doing research, like why not do it in physics? And so I went all the way and I said, PhD in physics, let's go. It's now or never. Because a lot of people tell me, they're like, after you graduate and you like, if you go into work in industry, you get accustomed to the pay, you get accustomed to the schedule of the 9 to 5. And then if they go back to do a PhD, it's too jarring. Like you have to make your own schedule. You have to set like study. The pay is not as good as industry. So, So I figured I'd do PhD now because I probably wouldn't be able to do it later. So yeah, that was kind of my reasoning. I don't know if it's flawed, but I'm here.
No, but I think it makes sense. And you're 2 years in. How's that going?
Yeah, it was really bad online. I did not like it online. Started when pandemic started. So first, yeah, bunch of online stuff. And it's hard too, because physics is a very like, you need to be slow and methodical, and it's nice to have somebody write down the equations on the board and you can ask them questions, because a lot of professors, like they're older professors, they'll just use like slideshows, they'll use PDFs, and they're like, here's my notes, and they're just like scrolling through like next. I'm like, stop, let me like write it down first. So that was not fun. But it's calmed down a bit. There's usually, like in the PhD, it's usually like 2 years of you take classes just to catch you up. And then after like 2 years, you present what you're going to do for your PhD for the next 3 to 4 years. So I'm almost done with that 2 year basic courses. And then I have to present what I'm going to be researching for the next three years. So
do you know what you're going to be researching? Do you have an idea?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, I'm trying to, let me sound cool here. It's numerical plasma fusion. So I do coding. I'm a real big numbers junkie. So it's essentially coding, analyzing, running simulations of fusion reactors. So what powers our sun, the fusion, fusing little particles together and creating energy. What powers our sun, we're trying to get that here on Earth, but it's really complex and hard to control it and maintain it. And so if you can run like numerical simulations where you simulate what's happening just with code, and then you try and analyze the performance of the reactor that way. And so I'm working on that. There's a bunch of different type of reactor designs and stuff. And so it's at a nice stage where there's kind of a solid idea of what we want, but there's a lot of different approaches. And so there's a lot of different avenues you can go about in exploring it. And so that's kind of what I do. I like the pretty graphs. I like the coding. So perfect for me.
And would that be, I mean, I don't want to sound dumb because I'm literally not familiar with this at all. But would that be more classified as astrophysics then? Because it's kind of related to, the sun.
It's not. So astrophysics would be, I think more of astrophysics, like you're monitoring celestial bodies. So it's more, it's more like telescopes and microwave kind of imagery and stuff like that. So you're imaging stuff essentially. That's what I consider that. But this is more kind of on the line of like engineering, and it's probably more engineering because you're concerned with like essentially like it's like a nuclear reactor. You're concerned with how much fuel you need, what the shape of the reactor is, how much power you require, power in, power out, kind of all the little technical details. So I'd consider it more engineering per se, but the physics part is understanding the physical forces of fusing and how to contain it and stuff like that, magnetism and electromagnetism. Yeah, all that fun stuff.
Casual, fun stuff.
Yeah.
What kind of classes have you been taking for that in the first 2 years?
So it's the basics are, so you take classical mechanics that's concerned with like the motion of stuff. So kind of you're operating in the everyday large scale. I throw this thing, what's the path it takes? Kind of that large scale study of objects moving and doing stuff. So classical mechanics, and then what's the other one? Statistical mechanics. That one's concerned with essentially counting probabilities. So if I have 100 particles, how are they going to behave? You get a lot of like laws of thermodynamics. How do gases behave? So that's kind of like large scale objects. How do they behave? How do a large number of objects behave? What's the other one? There's right next. I'm going to take quantum mechanics, which is that's the yeah, that's the fun stuff. That's worried with like atoms. Like that's where you get all the weird stuff. You have like you don't have atoms behaving as like spherical shell like objects. Like the typical picture you usually learn in chemistry is like an atom is a ball, an electron is orbiting that. But quantum mechanics basically says that it's not actually a ball. It's like they call it a probability wave. And so as opposed to being like definitively like my atom isn't just here, it's like 70% here, it's 25% over here, 25% over here. So there is a small chance that an atom is like way like 10 miles that way, but 99% it's going to be at this location here. So it's like it sees objects as not definitive like point objects, but more like probability waves. Like you have a certain percentage of being here versus there and stuff like that. So that you get a whole bunch of weird, quirky stuff with quantum mechanics. And then electromagnetism, that one is rough. That one's just worried about kind of the electric forces. But then the fun part about that is that you can have like conductors, like how do conducting spheres behave in the presence of a conducting rod, and like how do they attract? What are the forces between them? How do they move? So you get a whole bunch of weird scenarios where you like consider an infinite flat sheet of metal with a small hole in the middle. Like, how does that behave if I put a particle like up here? And it's like, okay, sure. I guess we're calculating that today. But yeah, that's more of what I'd use, since electromagnetism is concerned with charged particles, which is fusion. Plasma fusion is concerned with charged particles. So I have to use that, sadly.
Sadly.
Yeah. No, it just gets, I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, as I can imagine, based on what you described, I didn't understand most of it. I'm just gonna let you know now. But it seems to be very time and energy consuming, because I mean it's a very like, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So
I have a friend described it. He's in mathematics, and he's like, we have a couple of friends who aren't in any STEM related thing, no math, no science stuff. They look at us looking at our papers and our textbooks, and they're like, what? they look at the symbols. There's like math equations and stuff. They're like, are you reading another language? And we're like, oh, yeah, I guess we are.
Basically.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that at some points.
So is physics something you would want to pursue later down the road?
Yeah, I mean, so fun fact, I'm kind of doing this graduate stuff to buy time because I don't want to go into industry. I did internships. I did internships as like during the summer in industry. I didn't really like it. I guess I didn't like the flexibility. And so I like research. So I figured that was another thing that factored into the PhD. I like the flexibility. I like doing research, but I also get to explore kind of other things that I like. So writing a book, kind of DIY building stuff. Mm-hmm. And so who knows, maybe I'll do physics. Maybe I'll become an author, famous author. I don't know. Buy my book, please, so I can become a famous author.
Going with the flow. I like that.
Yeah.
But so in the industry,
I just... No, go on.
Could you talk about the industry a little bit more? Because I'm kind of like, what are the jobs, I guess, for physics or engineering? Yeah,
so in industry, it depends on where you want to work. So you can go the traditional route of kind of academia. That would be becoming a professor, becoming a teacher, becoming, I guess, like a researcher too. So there's always that route. You're kind of tied to a university, working with them. And then there's the kind of, you can work the government sector. So you work with like a government lab. They have a lot of research labs and stuff like that. You can work with them as a researcher. You can work with industry. You can work in kind of like the private sector. And the nice thing is that, like, I've heard a lot of people say this with a PhD in essentially anything. What the PhD signifies is that you can do research, you're dedicated, and you're kind of self-motivated, and you can kind of keep accountability of yourself. So it's a really like good sign for someone if they have a PhD, from what I usually hear, and that they usually get to direct their own projects per se, or they have a little more autonomy in working.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that clears it up a little bit more. And so lastly, just to kind of end this, I want to ask, what made you choose the title for your book?
Oh, okay. So yeah, the title is Xenogene. I had to think about this one a lot because I had a list of kind of other titles I wanted, Genoma and Genética. I wanted to make it something originally Spanish, kind of relating to my heritage and my kind of past. So I was Genética. That one was already taken by a corporation. I was like, dang. So some other ones. I was looking at a bunch of them, and it's like, there's a company, there's something else named after that. And so it was, so one of it, I think, was, so the second book in after the Ender's Game is called Xenocide. And that one, I like the Xeno prefix. I was fixed on that. And then I started looking up, I think I looked up like xenomorph from like Aliens. And I looked up that and I was like, ooh, Xeno, that sounds nice. And then I looked up the kind of the root of the word, what the prefix means. And it's like foreign. And I was like, ooh. And then I just tacked on gene in front of that. And there's another book called Xenogene out there, but I don't know. I looked up, apparently you can have the same name, so it's all cool.
Is it in English as well?
What?
That other book?
I think so. Yeah, his is like space stuff, but
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I realized, like, okay, I tacked those two together, and the reason I tacked them together was its meaning, its intent, but the symbology behind it is it's a foreign gene. That's literally what it translates to. And so it relates to the actual theme and the setting of you're modifying humans with foreign genes, but it also relates to the main character in that, you'll see this later, it's all symbolic.
Okay.
But he's in his home, kind of his hometown that he's familiar with. And then he gets injected into a place that's foreign to him. And then essentially he has to deal with that. And so it's kind of symbolic in that way, in that he is transferred from one place to another. And yeah, so.
Wow. I always think that the process of choosing the title is the most interesting, because it's like when you're reading a book and, I don't know, English class, and you're analyzing it, when the title drops, that's when you have to really take note of what's happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If it drops in the actual book, you're like, oh wait, what?
Okay, this has been very interesting. I really learned a lot from this.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Thank you so much for being part of my project and for being such a wonderful guest.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you for inspiring a bunch of people and just being so consistent about it and honest.
I'm really excited to read your book when it drops in. Is there a specific date, or is it just May 2022?
It'll be, May. I think the ebook comes out first May. Maybe the paperback comes as well. But yeah, around May, June, everything should be there. Ebook, paperback, it should be on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, kind of major booksellers. everywhere. So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna be on the lookout for that for sure.
Yeah.